John Harbaugh revealed his thoughts on the Baltimore Ravens offensive line and a plan for what he believes is the best thing to do with them moving forward. We talk about that. Diontae Johnson breaking his silence and so much more coming up next on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin IceShaker of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this bonus edition of the show, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Are free and available for you all podcasting platforms. That includes a video form on YouTube where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also, an audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. 5 days a week, Ravens coverage, Monday through Friday. And then, of course, we have bonus episodes like these as well. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a bigger turn on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You can start with $150 of bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are back, and we have a lot to dive into today. Again, the bye week, usually you're thinking, oh, there's not that much to dive into, just the team is off. Well, we have some stuff, just catching up on some headlines and other things as well. First of all, John Harbaugh had a lot to say about his offensive line and his plan for what he wants to do. And honestly, a lot of praise from John Harbaugh about the offensive line. So we'll talk about that situation and how Harbaugh feels about the group and what he wants to do there. Then Deontay Johnson, apparently right as the suspension was handed down, posted on Instagram, and a little cryptic message, not necessarily super crazy, like he didn't say anything, but I want to dive into that conversation a little bit more as well, using that post. And then also just, I have some more thoughts on the situation. And then finally, I'll just kind of give my confidence level on the Ravens right now, talk about where I am with that and a lot more. So let's start off with the offensive line. First of all, John Harbaugh during his press conference earlier in the week was asked about the offensive line and said, he was asked, are you going to make any changes on the offensive line? Is it possible that one of the areas is to maybe get some guys an opportunity? So obviously that would be an Andrew Voorhees or a Ben Cleveland. And John Harbaugh said, quote, I think we're pretty well set there. I think those guys can come in. The other guys that are working hard can come in and help us, but I'm not down on anybody on the offensive line. That's a really good defensive front we played against. I think we could have played better, especially in pass protection. Those guys would tell you that it could have been better, even in the run blocking sometimes for sure, but I don't think it merits any drastic changes right now, other than the fact that Josh Jones goes in there sometimes as an extra offensive lineman. He could have a chance. Ben goes in there as an extra O-line guy. I think he'd play well if he went in there, but I like the way the offensive line has played over the last number of weeks. That is concerning to me. I don't know about anybody else. And look, we can kind of identify this a little bit as John Harbaugh. He's not going to go up there and, in the spirit of coach speak, he's not going to go up there and say, man, yeah, Daniel Falele, he's not developing the way we need him to. And man, the offensive line is playing terribly. And man, these guys stink. We're getting new guys in. That just doesn't generally happen. Sometimes it does, but John Harbaugh generally is not a coach that does that. He is more of we're building everybody up. We're keeping everything we do close. And look, maybe they do come out of the bye week and Harbaugh just dupes everybody and it's a new offensive line unit moving forward. And there's some, like maybe Ben Cleveland gets a chance. Maybe a guy like Patrick McCary gets benched for Andrew Voorhees. Who knows? But this is what John Harbaugh is saying right now. And then again, he was kind of asked about the Eagles pass rush, because he said that, okay, that's a great defensive front. That's a great pass rush. And he said to the question of the Eagles not needing a lot of blitzers to knock Lamar Jackson off his spot and how that impacted the passing game, John Harbaugh said, yeah, if you don't have clean protection, you don't have a clean pocket every single snap, it's going to be an issue. The Eagles are good. They did a good job, and that's a challenge of football. But he said, I'm not down on our guys at all. I'm not disappointed. I'm not worried. I'm excited. We've got a bunch of tough competitive fighters that want to be the best they can be, so that's how I look at it. That obviously was more of a general answer, so I think he was talking about the entire team, but also was talking about the offensive line. But we can't sit here and say this offensive line has been great for the Ravens this season. Sure, I think they've been better than I expected them to be. Like, obviously, Ronnie Stanley's having a heck of a season for the most part. Tyler Linderbaum is great. Roger Rosengarten has stepped up at that right tackle spot and really played well. But again, we can't sit here and say that that unit has been incredible this season. Obviously, we knew that this team was going through an offensive line rebuild, right? We knew that they were figuring things out, and we knew that there were always going to be growing pains, and this was going to be a multi-year process. This was not going to be the Ravens lose 3 starters, and all of a sudden they can build it back up in less than a year. That was never going to happen. But that's the struggle of doing something like this when you are in a window of each year you don't win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson is another year of his prime you are wasting. So when you have to do these full offensive line teardowns and go through different changes and different phases of what makes an offensive line a good offensive line, and can you work with this guy? Can you work with that guy? It's, well, you have to deal with that during a season where the offense is historic, and it's possible that the offensive line, especially against a more physical defensive front, could be one of the reasons you lose in the playoffs. And so, look, I mean, the whole coaching staff feels this way. I mean, George Warhop, the offensive line coach, was really complimentary about Daniel Falele, said he's getting better every week. He's impressed with Falele and pass protection, but said his hands can get better. So, again, this is kind of the message from the organization right now, is we like our guys. We're not changing anything. I think it could be something where they should consider it. At least, even if it doesn't happen, I think they need to at least look themselves in the mirror and have a plan if stuff does not get better. There have been really good offensive line games, but it's about when you play the best of the best, when you play those really physical fronts. Like, for example, the Ravens play the Giants this upcoming week, next week after the bye. Dexter Lawrence not being there for the Giants is huge. It's massive. Dexter Lawrence, one of the best defensive linemen in this league, he would have given this offensive line fits. Now he's not in there. I think is going to be a pretty good offensive line game for the Ravens, but it's like you're going to play good defensive lines in the playoffs. Not every team has a good defensive line. Again, Buffalo, I don't think their defensive line is to the level it needs to beat Baltimore or Houston, Denver, LA, those teams. But the teams we've been talking about, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, those are the teams that you haven't been able to beat. And part of that is because their defensive lines just dominate you with players like Chris Jones and Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, right? Obviously, they have good players on those fronts, and they are game wreckers. And the coaches of those teams know how to exploit matchups to get those guys onto the guys that they want. So, again, it's a little concerning. Cole Jackson, who does a great job with, Ravens film and offensive line, he's a guru there. Ravens ranks at their position, minimum of 169 snaps and pass blocking efficiency. Ronnie Stanley, 35 of 83. Roger Rosengarten, 58 of 83. Tyler Linderbaum, 5 of 42. And Daniel Falele, 41 of 83. Patrick McCary, 53 of 83. Now, Andrew Voorhees, Cole also put in here as 4th of 83. And I think, again, that smaller sample size. But Voorhees wasn't necessarily playing terribly since he got injured and he lost the job. But he wasn't playing terribly. Of course, there were some moments of bad from him. And obviously, he wasn't great in certain aspects. But Patrick McCary, clearly, John Harbaugh was complimentary of Patrick McCary and talked a lot about him during his press conference as well, made a point, he was asked a specific question about Patrick McCary and, talked about how McCary's over his career high in snaps. He was asked about that, and for 13 straight weeks, he's played every snap, and it's been a challenge for him in the past because McCary has been injury prone and said he's played very good football. It's been a big plus, but the guard play, I guess, look, if you want to just take the most recent example against Philly, it's not been great. Like, the guard play has been okay at times, but I think you have options on your roster. If they had no options on their roster, and these were the 2 best options by far, and there was no question about it, then it's a different conversation. But it just feels like with John Harbaugh and some of the stubbornness that this organization can have at times, we talked about it, and we talked about it before, where, yes, it's a different shift in mentality for the group and the organization, where if you're not doing your job, Eric DeCosta is much more, hey, we're getting you out, right? We're bringing in somebody else who can. But John Harbaugh, it sometimes seems like he would rather lose his way than win the right way. And that to me is a difficult position to be in when you're an organization trying to win a Super Bowl. It feels like the stubbornness can be there a little too much at times for John. And at the end of the day, it could set this organization back in multiple different ways. So, Lamar Jackson was pressured on 56% of his snaps dropbacks, against Philadelphia. He also suggested, again, as we talked about, no offensive line changes. And again, 25 of 45 dropbacks against the Philly game. He was only blitzed on 6 dropbacks. So the Eagles were getting pressure with 4 guys, 5 guys. You were not getting all those blitz packs because Lamar is a blitz beater now. You can't blitz him anymore. So your best bet is to have a really physical, dominant defensive line and get pressure on him without blitzing. That's exactly what Philadelphia did. Coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about Diontae Johnson breaking his silence, a post that I didn't even know happened, but now we have to talk about it. And we'll talk about the situation as a whole based off of what's going on with that. So be sure to stay tuned. We'll have to get you on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. Is guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. And the show is brought to you by Skylight Frame. I have a big family and I come from a big family, and sometimes it can be hard and expensive to buy each single person a personal gift for the holidays. But we have the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. So you have seamless sharing. You can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. And they're a top-rated brand, over 1 million happy customers, thousands of 5-star reviews, and available in over 30 countries. Recommended by the Today Show, Forbes, New York Magazine, and more. And now is a special limited time offer for our listeners. Get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're available for you. Video form on YouTube where you can like and subscribe. Audio form where you can subscribe, follow along over there as well. Same shows, whether you prefer to watch or listen. We have you covered any which way. Diontae Johnson, this whole situation has been exhausting. It's been weird. It's been wild. It's been wacky, whatever you want to call it. Diontae Johnson, again, for those who don't know, suspended for a game for conduct detrimental to the team after he refused to go in the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Apparently declined multiple requests to go in the game. He's been visibly frustrated even after wins with his role. And frankly, I would not be shocked if he did not play another snap for the Ravens this season, and they just want to hold on to him and make him inactive to not allow him to go to a division rival or an AFC rival that they could see later down the line in the playoffs. Now, right as the suspension dropped, or right before, maybe right after, I can't pinpoint the exact time this happened a couple days ago, obviously, but Diontae Johnson posted some pictures on Instagram just of himself, and it's obviously one of those ones you can scroll through, and the last picture is a picture of a monkey with its tongue sticking out, and the caption, "Just in case you don't like me," with a couple of tongue out emojis and a laughing, crying emoji in the corner of the picture. And I guess this is him breaking his silence in a way, or maybe getting out in front, or, very vaguely sharing his opinion on what's going on. I don't really know what this means, but, I'm not going to sit here and just kind of speculate for 10 minutes on what, an Instagram post of, a monkey with its tongue out means. This is, again, Diontae Johnson posted on his Instagram, but the bigger story here is the situation as a whole and all the directions that this could go. And we've talked about that on the show over the last couple of days as this story has developed and kind of taken on a life of its own, where I feel like if this was any other situation, and if it was a player like, for example, an Eddie Jackson, who's not really helping anybody, he was terrible on the field. Not that Diontae Johnson's been this incredible player or anything, but, you're talking about a guy that really hasn't done much, and Eddie Jackson, obviously terrible on the field. You cut him and you say, all right, if a division rival wants to sign him, good luck. We'll face him in the playoffs and we'll feast. With Diontae Johnson, he's still a very talented player. And look, I get if he's frustrated with the role. I get if he wants more targets. But to not go in the game just opens up a whole different can of worms. And that is the disappointing part of this situation, is because you go out there and you get Diontae Johnson for this exact reason. For if a player like Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman goes down, the Ravens before the trade deadline could have stood to have a better receiver, a depth piece, right? He could have definitely stood to go out there, the Ravens, and get a guy like a Diontae Johnson. And I saw Jeff Rebeck speculating his opinion is that, the fact of, I don't necessarily believe that the Ravens, or it maybe wasn't in the cards for them, that they thought that a player like Deontay Johnson would have been available and they were looking at maybe lesser options. But I mean, Carolina wanted to get rid of him for essentially nothing. And Baltimore's like, okay, like, sure, we'll take on this wide receiver who obviously has had experience and quality seasons for essentially next to nothing. And look, I don't blame Baltimore for making the deal in terms of you're getting a really talented player and a trio of Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and Diontae Johnson. That's a heck of a trio. But when the guy doesn't want to play, but in reality, he should want to play, right? Because, I mean, all of a sudden it's contract year. You want more snaps, you want an opportunity, and then you're refusing to go in the game. Essentially, what that tells me is Diontae Johnson is essentially sticking it to the man and saying to the Ravens, yeah, okay, you want to use me now, but you haven't wanted to use me over the last month. Yeah, I'm not going in just because you want me to. I want you to show me that you want me. I mean, it's not how it works. Obviously, Diontae didn't choose to go to the Ravens, right? He got traded there, and the Ravens chose to bring in Diontae with the history that he had. And obviously you can fault whoever you want in that situation. If the Ravens should have even made the deal, there was always going to be that risk that happened when Diontae came in. But even after the game against Pittsburgh, right, he was interviewed and he said, I'm a Raven now, but you never know what the future holds. So it feels like he doesn't even want to be there. Like, it feels like he, saw this opportunity kind of dwindle before his eyes. He's not getting snaps. And what message does this send to teams that are looking for you, maybe in free agency, maybe a young team that wants a vet receiver to come in, help develop wide receivers, help a young quarterback? Would you want that guy on your roster? Someone who in 3 stops has had 3 different drama instances? I'm not bringing in that guy to my locker room, especially when you want to establish a healthy culture. Maybe a team that wants to deal with that and maybe knows how to deal with it. I don't know. Maybe Baltimore just didn't know how to deal with the situation. I'm not sure. But I'm not bringing in Diontae Johnson. This is a terrible look for him, and honestly, it's a bad look for everybody. That the Ravens, as we've talked about, have to deal with this blowout situation now, and after all the other drama they faced this season, it's like, man, it just feels different for a Baltimore Ravens team to have this much surrounding them in a year. Everybody talks about 2012, and as I've talked about before, that just felt like different drama. Feels like this drama for a lot of the players is more individual oriented, where as for what the 2012 team was, that was more team goal oriented. And, I'm not saying the Ravens can't overcome this, but just a different feeling overall. And again, I just feel like this Diontae Johnson situation very far from over. Coming up in the final part of the show, though, we'll talk about a confidence level in the Ravens right now, where I'm feeling about this team and what they could do moving forward. Stay tuned, a lot to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by IceShaker. Hey, Locked On Ravens fans, I know you're like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say, far from complete. Well, if that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fans in your life. Perhaps you've heard of IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make the ideal gift. Created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers, IceShakers has sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the gift you've been looking for. Go to IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. They have kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like the plastic bottles do, and they're third-party tested. They'll hold ice for 30-plus hours. Order your team-branded bottles today at IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShakers, show your support for your teams with the best brand of workout bottles on the market, IceShakers. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place biggest live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats with live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And so for that Ravens and Eagles game, again, thought the Ravens defense played really well, but Saquon Barkley did hit the over on his rushing yards. So if you had that, you probably have a large over on FanDuel. This was at FanDuel.com to join today. You started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every more FanDuel an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back. Final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here again and making us a part of your day here, especially on the weekend, as we grind out here daily Ravens coverage. Obviously, we do bonus episodes as well as our regularly scheduled 5-day-a-week program. And YouTube video form, you can subscribe and like the video. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers, and, you know, it's a big goal. Going to wear a Dixie Cup outfit for a full week. Once I hit it, I said that the first day I did this, started up in 2021 in video form, but obviously audio forms where we first started it up back in 2019, a few years beforehand, and that community has been growing at an awesome rate, so be sure to follow along and subscribe over there as well. Now, confidence level for me in this Baltimore Ravens team. Where am I? And again, for those who are watching or listening, be sure to comment if you're watching a video form below on YouTube, or message me on social media if you're listening in audio form. But to me, I'm at like a 6.5 out of 10, maybe 7 out of 10. And I know that might be a little high to some people, but I just feel like this final 4-game stretch is going to tell us a lot. And I feel like the Ravens will step up to the challenge. So maybe I'm wrong, right? Some of the stuff we've seen from the Ravens this season concerns me. I'm not sure they'll have enough time to fix it, even with the bye week. But I do think that, again, while we were talking before the season, when the schedule dropped, we were like, man, this bye week, it's so late in the year, and there's all this stuff that they're going to have to deal with injury-wise, and it's a bunch of physical football. Well, now we're here, and I'm like, man, the Ravens really needed a reset. You know, I think the coaching staff did, the players did, the whole organization needed a reset period. That, to me, I think where the confidence comes from, is they needed a reset, and I think they got it. Now, what do they do with that reset remains to be seen. We don't know what they're going to do with that reset. There are a lot of different ways this thing could go. It could go great. It could go poorly. But as long as you have Lamar Jackson, you have a chance, and you add Derrick Henry to that equation as well, as long as you have those two guys, I think you do have a chance. And the seeding, honestly, could work out in Baltimore's favor, even if they don't win the AFC North. I think Baltimore absolutely destroys Houston if they play a 4-5 game, where Houston is pretty much all but locked into that 4 seed. Houston has been a big disappointment this season. The AFC South in general is just terrible, and Houston is kind of the best team in a terrible division. But you would think with all that talent, they'd be able to muster together some good wins. CJ Stroud has kind of hit a sophomore slump, and they lose Stephon Diggs, which was a big loss. So I think Baltimore beat up on Houston. I think if they played Buffalo, we saw what happened the first time. Buffalo just doesn't have the horses defensively, I think, to keep up with the Ravens. Now, Matt Milano makes a difference, and they were missing a couple of guys, and so were the Ravens. I mean, the Bills also didn't have Amari Cooper, but I think that Buffalo game, Baltimore would have a decent shot to win. But, you know, it's about Kansas City. It's about Pittsburgh, some of those teams. Would they be able to defeat those teams? And could they go through a gauntlet that would be Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Kansas City? I think it's possible. I think Baltimore is better than a 5 seed, but they do have 5 losses, and that is going to come and bite them when it comes to seeding, when it comes to just getting everybody ready and, you know, AFC conference record or divisional record. That might come back to bite them. So that's where I think, again, you have 2 divisional games left, one against Cleveland, one against Pittsburgh, but you also have that stretch of 3 games in 10 days, which is going to be really brutal for this team. And obviously why I think the late bye week is happening is because you couldn't have Baltimore play a bunch of games and all of a sudden have a 3-game and 10-day stretch and be like, oh, here you go. I'll work out. No, I mean, that's a really brutal, tough stretch. The NFL really screwed the Ravens over with that, and it's still ridiculous that the Ravens have to do that. Play 3 games in 10 days, with obviously the Christmas game against Houston being the buffer in between the 2 of them. But, I mean, it's stuff that the Ravens, again, will have to overcome. They're going to have to overcome a lot in order to win a Super Bowl this season. I'm not saying it's impossible, but they have to be able to get right. They have to be able to be more consistent, get out of their own way, fix the penalties. All that stuff is going to be paramount, because when you get to the playoffs, yes, it's a whole new season. And we've seen Ravens teams that weren't favorites and, they were counted out. You've seen those teams win Super Bowls. But those teams also they were able to rally together in the playoffs and fix a lot of things that they were dealing with during the season. Can this team do that? Sure, it's certainly possible, especially with the way the defense has played in recent weeks. I think it's been a lot better. Zach Orr has been a lot better. But I know a lot of the conversation is about John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, and in the playoffs, can those two guys step up to the plate? And obviously Lamar Jackson as well. So the Ravens have all the talent in the world. They have a bunch of talent on offense, bunch of talent on defense. I just don't think it's all totally meshed together yet and shown itself in a consistent way where we've seen games of all three units being on it together. But for the most part, it's been one unit's on, 2 units are off, or 2 units are off, 1 unit is. It's just doesn't feel like they're a consistent bunch or aren't consistent enough. So, in my opinion, the Ravens do have a lot of soul searching to do over this bye week, and I think that they have to take the opportunity, but they also can't be stubborn in their own way. They have to adjust. They have to get better. And I have some confidence they can do that. I have some confidence that they won't do that. And that's a little concerning for me. But as a whole, Baltimore, once the playoffs start, they'll have as good of a chance as anybody, but it's a matter of how they actually respond and perform when the lights are the brightest. When it comes to a postseason, and again, in NFL, I've been saying this all season, an AFC conference that is, I think, a lot more wide open than a lot of people might anticipate. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way out, hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube in video form. Follow along and subscribe in audio form. 5 days a week for you of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up, we'll be back here, of course, with more Ravens content. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.